No one expected Diddy to say it live on Instagram, yet there he was in the middle of the 2020 pandemic, casually introducing a young white girl to his millions of followers. "This is Ava Barron Combs," he said, "my adopted daughter." It was a headline moment, and for a minute the internet bought into it. A powerful black music mogul adopting a homeless white child. It looked like a feel-good unity through love moment in a world ravaged by crisis. But then Ava vanished. No school photos, no birthday celebrations, no follow-ups, nothing. A child who was just introduced to millions disappeared off the grid, and no one could explain why. That live stream moment, once hailed as heartwarming, is now being replayed with a different lens. Ava looked tense. Her answers seemed rehearsed. Diddy was talking more than listening, controlling the narrative while she sat stiffly beside him. What kind of adoption was this? He even said it himself, comparing the adoption to Madonna's controversial adoptions of African children. That line, once brushed off as celebrity name-dropping, now haunts viewers. Because Madonna's adoptions have been plagued with accusations of child trafficking and shady legal loopholes, why would Diddy say that? Why? And who was Ava Barron Combs, really? When Diddy asked her to tell the story, Ava hesitated, so I was on the streets, she began awkwardly, and Papa Combs decided he would be a caring man. It didn't sound like a child sharing joy, it sounded like someone reading from a script. Diddy, as if sensing the discomfort, quickly jumped in to clarify, "I adopted you like Madonna adopted kids." That wasn't reassurance, that was foreshadowing. The world moved on, but a few fans didn't forget. They began noticing things. Ava rarely appeared in the background of family TikToks or birthday videos. She wasn't seen interacting with Diddy's daughters, only his sons. Her presence when it happened felt more like a prop than a person. The body language distant. Her eyes unsettled. The whole setup off. And then it all went silent. Ava vanished from Diddy's life just as quickly as she entered it. The internet had questions but no answers, and Diddy never addressed it again. Until Courtroom drama years later pulled Ava's name back into the spotlight. Actor Terrence Howard, a respected figure in Hollywood, dropped a bombshell in court. While testifying against Diddy's alleged predatory behavior, Terrence hinted that Ava's adoption wasn't just strange, it was possibly criminal. He shared his own disturbing experiences of being invited repeatedly to Diddy's home under vague pretenses only to be met with what he described as grooming behavior disguised as acting lessons. The implication: what happened to Ava might have been part of a broader pattern, not just manipulation, not just power games, but potential exploitation and worse. Because if Ava was never truly adopted, never legally protected, and never part of a genuine family unit, then what was she? Former insiders started whispering. Diddy's own ex-bodyguard claimed Ava didn't belong there, that the adoption was never real. And if that's true, it opens the darkest possible door. Was Ava trafficked under the cover of a celebrity adoption? Terrence Howard's cryptic warning to the courtroom that once a man's dignity is compromised, you don't get it back, suddenly felt heavier. Fans started connecting dots, rewatching clips, reanalyzing Ava's body language. What once looked awkward now looked like distress. What once looked random now seemed coordinated. And what once felt like a PR stunt might actually have been a setup. The stage was set, and now more people were paying attention, because this wasn't just a strange live stream moment anymore. This was the beginning of a mystery involving a little girl who was introduced to the world as family, then vanished without a trace. And the man who said he adopted her like Madonna never said her name again. In a packed courtroom, Terrence Howard stood before the judge not as an actor, not as a celebrity, but as a man ready to drop one of the most unexpected testimonies of the year. The moment was tense. Cameras were banned, but leaks still made their way online. What he said next stopped the room cold. Because Terrence wasn't just testifying about Diddy's alleged actions toward him, he was opening a window into something far darker. Something involving Ava Barron Combs. Terrence described being courted by Diddy under the guise of collaboration. The invitation started innocently: come teach acting, help with music, let's work on a project together. But nothing ever seemed to materialize. Instead, Terrence claimed he was met with silent stares and increasingly uncomfortable vibes. No scripts, no projects, just tension. And then came the assistant's warning. "He's trying to fuck you," the assistant said bluntly. Terrence didn't need more convincing. He cut ties immediately. But what stuck with him wasn't the awkward proposition, it was the pattern, the manipulation, the intentional setup of vulnerable people under the mask of opportunity. That's when Terrence's tone changed in court. He began speaking in broader terms about dignity, about manhood, about losing a piece of yourself in Hollywood's game. Once you give that up, he said, you don't get it back. His voice didn't crack, but you could hear something deeper underneath. And suddenly the courtroom wasn't just listening, they were leaning in. Because what Terrence described wasn't a one-off. It wasn't some uncomfortable dinner gone wrong. It was a strategy, a formula, a pattern of isolating targets, earning their trust, then pushing boundaries under the radar, and it eerily resembled what had happened to Ava. Fans online were already buzzing. Why did she disappear? Why didn't she have any school photos? Why was she always seated next to Diddy's sons? Now those questions had weight. Terrence didn't say Ava's name directly, but his message was clear. If men with resources and power could orchestrate these situations for grown adults, what chance did a homeless adopted minor have? What was chilling was how he explained the industry's unwritten rules. You lose your manhood, he said, and you don't get it back. He wasn't talking about sexuality. He was talking about exploitation, about the cost of saying yes and the danger of saying no. And while the world was still trying to process that Diddy's ex-bodyguard stepped forward with even more disturbing claims. According to Gene Deal, Ava wasn't adopted, at least not in the legal sense. She didn't belong there, he said. It was a setup. Let that sink in. Not a feel-good adoption, not a legal guardianship, a setup. And now Terrence Howard's courtroom comments started making more sense, because if Ava wasn't a legal dependent, if she wasn't even officially in the family, then she was unprotected, legally invisible. A child with no paper trail and no recourse. And what made this even more alarming was Terrence's warning about silence. Once you know what the game is, he said, you learn to be hands-off. That's the line that stuck with people. Why? Because it implies complicity. It implies that many people in Hollywood see what's happening and look away. They know the players, they know the victims, they know the game, but they stay quiet to protect their careers, their reputations, or simply out of fear. So when Terrence broke that silence, it mattered. And when the whispers about Ava started matching up with his testimony, it felt like the tip of something massive. Because if a star like Terrence Howard was being pressured behind closed doors, what happened to a 12-year-old girl with no family, no representation, and no legal status? The courtroom didn't have that answer yet, but the internet was already convinced this wasn't a family story. This was a cover-up in plain sight. As Terrence Howard's testimony continued echoing through social media and private group chats, a familiar name stepped forward. Someone who had been quiet for too long but had seen everything firsthand. Gene Deal Diddy's former bodyguard broke his silence, and what he revealed changed everything. Gene wasn't guessing, he wasn't speculating, he was there. In an explosive interview, he called Ava's adoption exactly what many feared it might have been, a calculated move for image control during the pandemic. It wasn't about helping that girl, he said. It was about optics. Let's rewind. Back in 2020, the world was locked down. Celebrities were trying to remain relevant, doing charity live streams, pushing positive messaging, and showing their softer sides. That's when Diddy brought Ava onto Instagram Live, presenting her as his adopted daughter. It was a perfect narrative, a powerful black music mogul saving a homeless white child. But according to Gene, none of it was real. She didn't belong there, he said flatly, and she wasn't adopted. It wasn't just that Ava didn't have paperwork. Gene hinted she didn't even have basic protections. No schooling arrangements, no family structure, no integration into the Combs household. She showed up on camera, said her lines, then disappeared. And here's where it gets even darker. Gene claimed this wasn't a random act. It was a template, a PR maneuver that mirrored celebrity adoption scandals from the past. He brought up Madonna again, not as a comparison, but as a warning. Because while the public once saw Ava's story as sweet and inclusive, Gene saw it differently. He saw a vulnerable white girl, possibly homeless, picked up during a time of chaos and isolation. She was presented on live stream like a trophy, and once the moment passed, once the story served its purpose, she was gone. No family birthday parties, no holidays, no presents in the real world, just gone. And that timeline aligned with more than just suspicion. It aligned with mounting lawsuits, federal investigations, and internal conversations in the music industry. Gene said flat out the industry knew something was off, that other insiders had been quietly whispering about Ava for years, but no one wanted to be the first to speak. Until now. And Gene didn't stop there. He alleged that devices seized during the FBI's raid on Diddy's properties could contain footage of incidents involving Ava and potentially others. Disturbing, graphic, incriminating material that would change this case from speculation to confirmation. Let that settle in. Not just testimony, not just rumors, footage. And what does that mean for Ava? If true, it means this wasn't just a failed adoption. It was a planned campaign. She was selected, presented, and potentially discarded. Not because she was unwanted, but because she had already served her purpose. And that's the line that hit viewers hardest. Because this wasn't a case of a neglected family member. This was a case of strategic exploitation. Gene suggested that Ava's entire introduction to the world wasn't about family at all. It was about softening Diddy's image, creating headlines, and masking something more sinister. And Ava wasn't the only one. Gene spoke about patterns about other girls, about other victims, about how the industry enables this kind of behavior because it's profitable, because it protects its kings, and because speaking up gets you blackballed. He said Diddy started doing to others what was once done to him. That's the cycle. The abuse doesn't end. It mutates. It becomes institutional. And innocent people like Ava become the collateral. By the time Gene was done talking, the internet wasn't asking if something had happened to Ava. They were demanding to know how long it had been going on and who else knew. Because now Ava wasn't just a mysterious figure from a pandemic-era livestream. She was possibly the key to exposing something much bigger. And if Gene Deal was telling the truth, then we haven't even scratched the surface. The further the truth unraveled, the more terrifying the parallels became. If Ava's disappearance was beginning to feel sinister, the comparison to Cassie Ventura's lawsuit took it to a whole new level. Because Cassie didn't just file a lawsuit against Diddy, she dropped a bomb. Her case wasn't just about domestic violence. It was about psychological warfare, physical abuse, and horrifyingly organized sexual coercion that blurred every line between celebrity and predator. She said Diddy controlled everything. Her wardrobe, her phone, her friends, her body. She accused him of orchestrating what she called freak-offs, disturbing events where Cassie was allegedly forced into sexual encounters with strangers for Diddy's entertainment and control. These weren't isolated incidents. She described them as frequent, calculated, and traumatizing. After each one, she felt dirty, hollow, erased. And suddenly people began looking at Ava's disappearance through a new lens. Because if Cassie, an adult, a rising star with industry connections, was allegedly groomed and broken down in private, what chance did a young white homeless girl have? Especially one without legal guardianship, family ties, or protection. The more you read Cassie's court documents, the more you hear Ava's silent scream between the lines. Cassie described being given to-do list tasks to report her location to Diddy at all times. She said he beat her for making the wrong face, that he'd record the freak-offs not for pleasure, but for blackmail, for power. Now ask yourself, what if Ava wasn't just filmed during that live stream? What if she was recorded afterward? There's no confirmation yet, but federal agents have reportedly been combing through devices, cloud accounts, and storage connected to Diddy, looking specifically for footage involving minors. And the timeline fits too well. Cassie was 19 when she met Diddy. She was signed to his label. She was sexually inexperienced. He gained her trust, then according to her claims, he used that trust to break her. Now look at Ava. Picked up during a global crisis, introduced during a PR moment, vanished without trace, always placed near his sons, not his daughters, never appearing in school photos, never mentioned again. In hindsight, it all feels staged. And fans can't unsee it. They've begun dissecting that 2020 live stream with surgical precision, pausing every frame, studying Ava's body language, listening to the discomfort in her voice, the way she stumbled through her lines, the way Diddy interrupted her as if correcting a mistake in a performance, not a memory. And the comparison that sent chills down everyone's spine? Madonna. During the stream, Diddy compared himself to her, but now people aren't hearing a name drop. They're hearing a confession. Because Madonna's adoptions have been scrutinized globally, she's been accused of bypassing international laws, manipulating court systems, and exploiting children for optics. So when Diddy said, "I adopted you like Madonna," he wasn't being casual. He was possibly revealing the playbook. In Ava, she was the headline. For one day, just long enough for the cameras to roll, for screenshots to circulate, for articles to be written, and then nothing. No custody paperwork has surfaced, no school records, no further appearances, only silence. But what makes this even worse is the idea that Ava's disappearance wasn't a mistake or oversight. It might have been the plan. Cassie's lawsuit has opened the floodgates, and every detail that emerges only sharpens the theory that Ava wasn't brought into a home, she was brought into a system that manipulates, that isolates, that destroys. And if those FBI raids turn up what some insiders fear they will, we're not just talking about a trafficking case, we're talking about a ring. And Ava, she might have been the child that finally brings it all down, but the clock is ticking. And every day that passes without answers is another day the world risks forgetting her face. That's why this part of the story matters. Because while celebrities trend and headlines fade, Ava's fate remains a blank space, a void that demands the truth. And if the parallels to Cassie's horror are even half true, then this isn't just about Diddy. It's about the industry. It's about the systems that let this happen. And it's about the silence that makes it all possible. If everything so far felt like a slow descent into a nightmare, what happened next was the explosion. 50 Cent had been taunting Diddy for years on Twitter in interviews with memes that seemed like beef but now read like breadcrumbs. But in 2024, the mask came off. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson didn't just throw shade. He declared war with the documentary. Its working title, Did He Do It? And with that single phrase, the internet erupted. Because it wasn't a joke, it wasn't a diss track, it was a bombshell documentary project claiming to expose everything backed by real footage, real testimony, and real victims. Insiders say the film covers everything from Cassie's freak-offs to federal raids to surveillance footage recovered from Diddy's seized electronics. But the part that truly rattled viewers? Ava Baron Combs. Her name appeared again quietly in whispers from sources close to the investigation, but this time it wasn't just speculation. According to leaks, Ava is cooperating. If true, that changes everything. Because her testimony wouldn't just confirm rumors, it would put Diddy's actions into full view. It would offer the missing puzzle piece that connects Terrence Howard's courtroom revelations, Gene Deal's insider account, and Cassie's brutal lawsuit. It would be the voice that can't be ignored. And fans online already feel the storm coming. 50 Cent in a chilling voiceover said, "They can't charge him for what we saw, but we can't unsee it." The implication. The footage exists, and if the public ever sees it, Diddy's legacy will be burned to the ground. That's why this story won't die. Because now it's not just a court case, it's a reckoning. The FBI raids weren't symbolic, they were strategic. Devices were seized, clouds were accessed, hard drive security footage and secret backups that insiders say may contain years of incriminating material evidence. So disturbing that agents had to bring in trauma specialists to review it. And in that data, there may be footage of Ava. If so, this isn't just child endangerment. It's exploitation, it's trafficking, it's federal crime on the highest level, and it goes beyond Diddy. Multiple lawsuits have now named his sons Justin and Christian Combs in separate allegations. Justin was already linked to an ongoing investigation involving trafficking activities at parties connected to Diddy. Christian is facing a sexual assault lawsuit, and both were frequently seen near Ava during her short public appearances. Let's call it what it is. Suspicion has become strategy. The feds aren't fishing, they're hunting. And Ava's name is at the center. But the biggest question remains unanswered. Where is she now? Some say she's in witness protection. Others think she's still in danger. But sources close to the investigation insist that Ava is safe and ready to speak. And if she does, it could trigger a domino effect Hollywood has never seen. Terrence Howard started the fire. Gene Deal poured gasoline on it. 50 Cent lit the match. And Ava, she might be the voice that burns the whole house down. Because she's not just a missing girl anymore, she's a symbol of every ignored victim, of every silenced story, of every kid swept into the shadows of celebrity culture and left behind when the lights went out. The world is watching, the feds are listening, and Diddy, he's no longer in control of the narrative, because now the truth is spilling out, not in whispers, but in screams. What began as a feel-good moment has unraveled into one of the most disturbing mysteries in entertainment history. The smiling child on Diddy's livestream was never just a viral moment. She was a red flag. A missing girl whose silence is louder than ever. And now we wait for the agents for the footage for the courtroom revelations to explode. But one thing is certain. This is more than a trial. This is a reckoning. Now you know. The question is, what will you do with the truth?